At Kings Island, it's never too early to start thinking about next year's fun. That's why we're offering the lowest price of the year on a 2022 Gold Pass right now. That includes unlimited visits this year, so you can enjoy Tricks and Treats Fall Fest, Haunt, and Winterfest. Then unlimited visits next year to try new foods, hang with the Peanuts gang at Planet Snoopy, scream on our world-class coasters, and splash away at Soak City Water Park. All for as low as $105 plus applicable taxes and fees. Hurry, offer ends soon, so get your Gold Pass now at visitkingsisland.com. It's amazing in here.
Across September, the podcast is being sponsored by Netlandish and their software, Help You Find Me. Help You Find Me is a digital If I Go Missing file that allows you to share essential personal information with family and friends to assist in keeping you safe and giving your loved ones peace of mind. The software is really easy to use and end-to-end encrypted, meaning that the only people who can access your information are people who have your permission. To find out more, you can visit helpyoufind.me/HYFMcult. That's helpyoufind.me/HYFMcult to find out more today. Hello listeners, and welcome to this week's episode of the Cult Vault. For this episode, number 120, I wanted to go back and shout out the current Patreon and subscribers to the podcast. On Patreon, we have Darian, Leanne, Avril, Megan, Caroline, Blanche, Amanda, Shelby, Rochelle, Renee, Caroline B, and our two newest patrons, Jacqueline and Emily. Welcome to the group. Your names have now been added to the sponsors page on the website, and I really hope you enjoy your exclusive content and merchandise. Subscribing through Red Circle, we have Corey, Kevin, and Stephanie. Thank you all so much for your continued support. Although your monetary contributions mean that you can access exclusive content, you guys are also ensuring that the main podcast stays completely free, with episodes being released every Friday. And I know that I say this a lot, but I am forever grateful for your continued support. Anybody interested in supporting the show in this way can do so by visiting patreon.com/cultvaultpod and contributing the show from just £1 a month. Today's episode is with T, who talks us through his time with a branch of Sufism in Middle America. This episode does come with themes of child abuse, spiritual abuse and more, so please listen with discretion. Now here is T. So hello, Todd, and welcome to the show. Thanks for agreeing to chat with me today. I am really excited to explore this new territory on the podcast. Would you like to start by introducing yourself to the listeners?
I will. My name is Todd, although I want to say that I've just started going by T. A little bit of a name change feels good to me right now. And I'm in Illinois, America, where we just in the last hour received a new mask mandate from our governor.
Wow,
and
okay.
So we're in the middle of all of it. And I'm in the south of the state, which is a very low vaccination area.
Right,
So
okay.
when people, especially in the UK, when you think of Illinois, you think Chicago, but it's actually a 5-hour drive from Chicago is where I am.
So yeah, you could like drive pretty much across the country in that amount of time in England.
So I'm still in Illinois, but I'm very far south, very close to Kentucky, and it's the culture down here is a little bit more like the American South than it is like Chicago. So that's all.
And with this mask mandate, is that something that you're kind of on board with, being in a low vaccination area?
I am on board with, this is a great topic because our group was very anti-vaccination that I was in for 23 years. So now that I've been out for about, 16, 17 months, it feels really important for me to be vaccinated and to trust the government for a change and to follow the established protocols. And yes,
Especially as well to probably just to have the independent decision on whether you're going to go and get the vaccination or not, kind of just to decide for yourself.
It does feel good, and it feels good to just, trust the science is something that is meaningful to me beyond maybe the normal person who hasn't been through 23 years of not trusting the science.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that that's something that we'll get into as we go on with our conversation. And we're here today to talk about your experience with a Sufi offshoot. Is that right?
Let's just say up front, it's a Sufi group. It's Sufi as in Islamic. And before I go into anything, I really want to separate those traditions from the experience that I had.
Right.
So Sufism is beautiful. Wow. The heart of it, the literature, the rituals. Islam also is something that I bear no hard feelings towards as a religious tradition. I learned Arabic, I learned the prayers, I did all these things, and I do not connect my experience with this group with those traditions in general. But yes, they were, the group I was part of was called Daimi Tariqat. Tariqat in Arabic means the way or the path. And there are many, many different manifestations of Sufism. This one in particular is led by a narcissist, which something I've just learned in the last year or so. But yes, that's how they identify.
And that's Daimi Tariqat. Is that how you say that?
Daimi. Daimi is also an Arabic word that means ancient and eternal.
Okay.
So together, and one of the legitimizing principles of this group, and I think is that it is part of a lineage that goes all the way back to the Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, and through Bangladesh. So when you encounter the group, you learn that Sufism as a tradition in general, the sheikh or whoever is in sort of the leader of a particular group, in many cases can trace the spiritual authority that they've been granted all the way back to the Prophet Muhammad.
Okay.
And that's important. So the word Daimi is sort of is a name that came through kind of the Bangladesh cultural manifestation of this particular lineage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think it's important what you've just mentioned there, that our conversation today about this particular group that you're a part of is in no way a reflection on Sufism in general, overall, as an umbrella kind of movement. That is correct.
There are so many different ways that operates.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always like we say as well, when somebody will come on the show and say, this particular group I was a part of, let's say it was a fundamentalist Christian group, and the person I'm interviewing will describe that group as a cult. We're not going to sit here and then say that Christianity in general overall is a cult. So we're obviously going to go through and apply those same principles with our conversation today. And can you give us a brief introduction to Sufism overall as a movement, and then we'll kind of narrow it down to the group that you were a part of?
Sufism is interesting because let's just say, I was going to say Western popular culture, but let me just say American, because I can't really speak for how it is in Europe. But
okay.
Sufism became associated with Rumi and Hafiz, and it became sort of mainstream marketable through some poetic, through poems and poets in the 90s. And Sufism here, in my experience of it, was really not associated with Islam. It was just sort of this beautiful floating mystical idea, right? And I knew that there were dances, and I knew a little bit about it. I did not until I met the Daimi Tariqat in 97, I did not associate Sufism with Islam. But in its tradition and its history, it is sourced in Muslim history. Now, this is all very complicated, but in certain parts of the world, Sufism is very mainstream in terms of Islam. In other parts of the world, it's very marginalized and secretive because right now, different aspects of Islamic culture are very suspicious of kind of the way that Sufism tends to center around a particular person, and the way that in some areas there are Sufi sheikhs who are revered after death and people visit their shrines. And this kind of culture is a little bit antithetical to certain aspects of Islamic culture. Now, somebody out there is going to know a lot more about this than I do. Mm-hmm. So let me just say that I know what I know through my experience with Daimini Tariqat. So please correct whatever in there that you know better than me.
Yeah. And also, if anybody else has any experiences relating to kind of this group or an offshoot of this movement, then I'd love to know more, because this is the first time I've come across any branch linking back to Sufism. So this is new territory for me, and I'd be delighted to know more. So if anybody would like to come and speak about their experiences, then yeah, come and let us know. We want to hear everything.
Well, this particular group considers itself to be kind of a manifestation of true Islam. So they don't, like, a lot of people will say, like, oh, Sufism is like a branch of Islam. And I said, well, that depends on who you ask. I mean, most Sufis are going to say, no, we're not a branch. We are Muslims, And then some of the non-Sufi Muslims are going to say, like, no, those are not Muslims. So, I mean, just like in Christianity or any religious tradition so huge, there's a lot of differences of opinion and experience about who is what, right? But
yeah, absolutely.
This group thought of itself as pure Islam.
And so you've got kind of Sufism as a kind of, if Islam is the big umbrella on top, Sufism is one of the things that comes from that umbrella. And then under that, there's this group that you were part of that believed themselves to be the purest of Sufis, or the purest of Islam.
Well, it's a really tricky thing. Well, first of all, it was interesting that you said under, because there's not a hierarchy and there's no accountability. Like these groups operate independently. So there is no kind of bigger organizing body. This group is its own thing. And you had said something else, which I forgot, but what did you ask me?
Yeah. So I was kind of just drawing on Islam with Sufism as a kind of branch off of Islam,
right.
and then the group you were part of as a kind of branch of Sufism, and if they thought of themselves to be the true Sufis or the truth in Islam. I'm just wondering, the movement that you were a part of, particularly how they viewed themselves.
Gosh, I wish I could. Yeah, okay. This leads me into a whole new thing, which I think this is really good, because I've done a few interviews, and this might take us in a little bit of a different direction.
Yeah,
so
that's fine. Yeah, absolutely.
So I was raised without religion. Okay, so I'm kind of raised like an American Democrat, which is sort of like academic family, right? So I became interested in religion really kind of as a political, poetic idea. In other words, I was always really politically radical. And the reason I became interested in religion was because I found these theologians, especially feminist theology, American, I found some writers while I was in college who, to me, spoke, I can't explain it, but spoke a language that I just gravitated towards more than almost any. And there was a woman a particular named Carter Hayward, and she was a lesbian. She's a lesbian feminist Episcopal priest, and she would write about like embodiment and co-creation and these kind of radical Christian ideas. And I just loved it. Like, I can't explain why I gravitated towards that. I mean, my own history is like I was a gay guy. I'd come out. I was sexual abuse survivor. All these stories are very interwoven, but somehow when I'm 21, I am, this white guy who is kind of radically devoted to these lesbian feminist theological ideas. It's a little bit hard to explain why that was. So then I ended up going to seminary. So, and I was thinking for a while I might be ordained as Christian in some way, but honestly, I could never quite find my way into any kind of Christian theology that made sense to me. I was always sort of like, what is this cross stuff? And I just didn't get it. It didn't resonate. But in my mid-20s, I was very committed to a non-hierarchical religious establishment experience. And so I was explicitly against what I ended up in, which was a complete hierarchy where we submitted ourselves to a guru. So I look back on that and I go like, wow, how did that happen?
Yeah. But I mean, interestingly about that, did you go into this knowing that it did have a hierarchy involved, or was that revealed sort of after a little bit of time spent within the group?
Well, that this is to untangle this is really the work of a lifetime for me to try to understand how
absolutely
how I was susceptible and how it happened gradually. And so I was 29. I was in a PhD program in psychology, but a combination of lots of things. I just was very ripe to. I needed a place to feel safe in the world, I guess. And so a friend of mine invites me. He says, I met these Sufis. And I'm like, that sounds weird. And I honestly, I remember thinking, well, they're Muslims. They must be homophobic. Like that was because I'm an out gay guy. I'm like, they must be homophobic. I mean, it was a little bit of a stereotype, but I was suspicious. And then he says, there's this guy named Sheikh Dean. And Dean spelled D-I-N. And I thought, well, that's weird. And I remember him saying, I need to go ask him before you come visit. And I'm thinking, okay, that's really weird. Like, you got to ask his permission. But my friend who was visiting there, he's a gay guy. And one of the first stories he told me was that the sheikh had brought a friend of his into the community house in Carbondale, and the friend was dying with AIDS. And they nursed him and they gave him hospice care. And they took care of and I thought, well, that's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, what
right?
year is this as well?
This is 97.
So it's kind of, obviously we've had some progression.
Yes.
With it. We've still got a very long way to go, but there's been some shifts and some changes in mentality and approach and thoughtfulness around that subject matter and the LGBT community as a whole, to use that term again that you said earlier, Western culture. So 97, for you to hear something like that must I mean, was this person that they were nursing, was he a gay man himself?
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean,
okay.
So this sheikh took a gay man into his house who was dying with AIDS. They brought his close friend, who was my friend, in. They brought his mother into the house and they nursed him. And what a beautiful story, right? And
absolutely, yeah.
So that was the first of many stories that I heard. And then he told me that this community had an organic farm. And I thought, wow, because I wasn't really at that point used to a spiritual community having those kinds of values and putting them into practice, right? So I thought, wow, this group, they moved to Southern Illinois, they have a farm there, and I was intrigued, right? And then I thought I would be safe there as a gay person, and so I came and visited. I did a 4-hour drive from my university, and I came and visited, and I've just been, I'm in a performance program at school right now, and I've just been writing about this moment. So the moment is when I walked up to this house. So I don't know how to describe it. It's sort of a typical American looking neighborhood. It's a big brick house,
Right.
probably from the 1920s, and it's beautiful, and the lawn is beautiful, and there's flowers, and I walk in, and it's just perfectly curated, and there's a feeling. So you walk in, I think a lot of people have these stories, but you walk into this place, whatever the environment is, and you go, wow, right? So I felt wow. And of course the falling in love took a while, but I'm the kind of guy who, for better or for worse, will too quickly, fall into something. And I just pretty quickly decided that this was something I wanted to try. And there was a sheikh, there was a guru, but I took my cues from the people that I met, and my friend who was already there, I trusted him. And then I met people, and the people that I met were, not surprisingly, lovely and open-minded. And some of them were European, and they were brilliant, like this Dutch scientist who quit her job to come and stay here. And I mean, they were legitimately brilliant, very electric, exciting and intelligent human beings. And there was nothing in those first moments and in the meeting of the people and that going to the farm to visit. And so the hierarchy and the sheikh thing might have been like, well, that's weird, but the overwhelming feeling of meeting these people was really positive.
Yeah, that safe community that you've kind of been searching for, or kind of when you get there and it's so beautiful and so lovely and everybody seems so welcoming that you realize that maybe that's what's been missing.
That's what has been missing, yeah. And then also that the people, it's a very, very alluring thing to feel like you're part of something so small. That's, in my mind, it's like finally people who are as radical as I am, or people who are willing to give up, their mainstream materialism, whatever, to really commit to changing the world. So it sort of fit what I wanted to believe about myself also.
And I think a few people who have come on the show and had these types of stories, we always end up saying that I'm sure anybody or a large percentage of people that have this experience would be like, wow, this is amazing. I would absolutely love to be part of something that feels like it's bigger than myself, but also means I can improve on myself and feel safe in my environment and part of a community, and contribute to the organic farm and this way of life that is away from electronics and the stress and of all the hustle and bustle and the 9 to 5 and scrimping and scraping everything to try and buy a first house and all of those things. The way you've just described it there, it is something that would be appealing to me if I went to visit.
Sure.
So it's so hard when people say, well, I should have read the warning signs, because a lot of the time there's a reason why initially there are no warning signs, and sometimes or more often than not with these stories it's too late when people start to think that there could be something not quite right, when they're completely invested by that time in the environment that they've kind of come and become a part of.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I'm really interested to know that if you joined this group at 29, sort of a little bit about your life before then and the events that led up to kind of you starting a PhD and then meeting the group.
Well, I'm the youngest of four. My father was a professor in Indiana, and I was smart. I was musical. By the time I was 14, 15 years old, I knew that I was gay. One of the tricky things in my story is that I had been sexually abused by a grandparent, but that I during that time of my life I had forgotten it.
Right.
So it wasn't until I was in seminary in my mid-20s that started to come back to me. So for those of you who have had that experience of having to, it's like you have an experience stored in your body, and then to unpack it is really disequilibrating. I just made that word up. So like I'm pretty unbalanced. I mean, I did have treatment. I'm, doing alcohol and drugs in different ways. I'm just kind of teetering through my 20s.
Right.
Really, I mean, primarily my experience in the world was terror. Like I'm just scared, and my boundaries are I don't have good boundaries. I'm liable to, I'm the kind of person who can suddenly end up in a stranger's apartment in, Brooklyn, New York. Like I don't know where I am. I might be on a drug. I might there was a real feeling of not grounded.
Right.
I did not have the experience of feeling on the ground, feeling like I could make my own decisions, feeling I was not a person who trusted my own instincts, so.
Yeah, I mean, not. I obviously I have no professional experience, so I'm not armchair diagnosing, but it sounds very similar to when in disassociation that people feel in themselves when they've been through trauma, and a lot of times without realizing that they have experienced trauma, whether it's forgotten or it's suppressed, or they haven't realized that an experience they've been through is not normal or typical for somebody in their culture or somebody for their age. So perhaps that out of body feeling is linked to all of that. And I wonder if you did you know without realizing before you kind of unearthed this experience, this memory that you had, did you know that there was something not quite right, or were you confused because you didn't feel like you had a reason to feel kind of detached from things?
That's such a great question, because it was a very slow process of realizing that, like, when I think back on it, I'm like 22, 23 years old. I remember sitting in my room and actually had I had a thought that was, this does not add up. Like the way that I feel in the world does not connect with how I remember things. So like at a certain point I realized something is wrong. And it's weird because you're a fish swimming in the ocean. You don't know any different from what you're in. So it's really quite a process to try to see yourself and realize, without the memory attached, that, and with me, the tricky narrative was that I had, in my dissociation and the trauma with my grandfather, is I had remembered him as the one who loved me. So I had developed this relationship with him. He died when I was 12, but after he died, I had developed this kind of internal narrative with him as he was the one who really loved me.
Okay.
And I did not associate that with any trauma. That was how I digested the trauma, right?
Yeah.
And I remember feeling in my body in such a way that it started to come into words that something was not right with him.
Yeah.
And it was a very palpable moment. And it came with, here's I guess a trigger warning for people, but it came with a feeling of wanting to self-harm, and it was not like I'm suicidal. It was like something's in my body and it has to come out.
Right.
This feeling. And so I did come through that, so that for a while after seminary, I was really not able to function, and I had to kind of reboot. I went to a treatment center, and I had with a master's degree, I worked at, I don't know what the UK version of this, but the Kmart is sort of like, it's like Walmart. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm stocking shelves with underwear, trying to get my bearings back. And I did a little bit. And then I was in a PhD program in psychology, but none of that feeling of being ungrounded really was ever resolved. And I found myself teaching classes stoned, and then I found myself in a relationship with a professor, and like things were not steady, and I was just always in a state of real fear,
Right.
just in the world.
Yeah.
I just scared,
Yeah. I mean, I wondered initially if your thoughts and feelings, before you were able to pinpoint what it was that you had suppressed or changed in your mind, to make it, I guess, maybe once your grandfather had passed away, to make it like almost to protect yourself, your brain changed the meaning behind what had happened. I again, as I said before, I have no professional experience, but
it did that before he died. I mean, when I look back on it, the messages he conveyed to me and the way that I dealt with that trauma in a private way was just to believe him. I mean, this is it's such a great connection to the guru, is because I believed my grandfather, and I believe the guru. It's like so for me, there really is a direct link between, childhood trauma and I'm not saying that this is true for everybody, but for me, there was a susceptibility, and the relationship was similar, where, so my grandfather told me a narrative, and I believed him, and I forgot the parts of it that were scary and painful for me, but I stored them in my body. You understand?
Yeah. And kind of took the message of love and stored it as a familial love in your mind, as opposed to the more nefarious kind of messages that were coming from those interactions, I suppose.
Yeah, and then the only way, what happens is, and I think most abused kids, this is what we do. It's like the only way to understand the horrible shit we feel is to blame yourself for it. I mean, so when I'm feeling, I mean, I had so many difficult moments, and the only way for me to understand them was to think that I was a bad person.
Okay.
Like I had done something wrong. And so part of the way that I began to see that something was wrong was that my relationships in the world were really unbalanced, so I developed like really intense obsessions with people, and all the way through high school and through college. And some of them, my behaviors were not I couldn't make decisions that were balanced. And I was, I would say I was guilty in some cases of being kind of a stalker and just obsessing and, involved with people who were not available to me. And, I suppose a lot of people when they're 21, that's their story. I don't think that's so unique. but at some point I went like, why am I acting like this?
Mm-hmm.
How does this make sense? I didn't understand,
So you've been through these traumatic experiences as a child.
Yes.
And then your grandfather's passed away at the age of 12.
I'm
your
12,
age,
yeah.
12. And around the age of 14 or 15, you come out as an openly gay person.
To myself, I did not speak it until I was 17.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Friends. Yeah. To friends and yeah.
And how was that received? What period in time was this?
Well, this is 85-ish. I'm in a university town which had a pretty big gay presence. I think mostly the kids who were around me, at least, were. It is the mid 80s, so the world is small, but yeah. I was really mostly supported, and I did find, like, I had a great therapist that, and my family, even though this was new to them, they were intellectuals. So I think that helped them to not just be, they didn't reject me. They were supportive. And then I was in the very enviable position to kind of choose where I would go to do my college work. And so I was able to choose an environment that was very liberal. So I ended up at a college in 1986 in Iowa. It may sound strange. It's very rural America, but this particular college was very open-minded. So I found myself in a place where being gay was totally not an issue.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Even now, I think people are lucky to find those environments. So that sounds great.
Yeah. So I was out, I was comfortable, I was able to express my ideas. I was politically, tuned in. All those things were happening.
Yeah, and that's great. I was going to ask if you felt like some of these thoughts and feelings that you were having about yourself before you kind of worked out what it was in your early 20s, if it was because you were out as a gay man. But it doesn't sound like you had one of those experiences where you struggled to be openly gay and kind of being authentic to yourself and everybody else around you. It doesn't feel like that would have contributed to you feeling like maybe you were. It's hard for me to word it correctly, but a lot of the people I speak to, especially from Christian backgrounds,
yes,
will they feel like they can't live their authentic life because of.
I see what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Okay, so there was a dissonance, and what I mean is that I'd be like, well, I'm gay, blah blah blah, right? But I had a lot of personal problems manifesting that in any kind of way that felt comfortable. Okay, so my relationships, I was attracted to men much older than myself. I was not attracted to peers. When I was sexually active, it was really controlled, and I was really scared. And I was often, drunk or something. And so to say that I was gay to be out was not the same as like I'm having a comfortable gay lifestyle.
Right. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Right. I couldn't find a way to feel at ease. And this really contributed to the way that the cult brought me into a heterosexual marriage. So about 2 years after I joined the cult, I got married to a woman, and I had not been in a heterosexual relationship since, I don't know what you'd call it. And it's like 6th grade. So I'm about 12 or 13.
Right.
That's
Okay.
last,
Yeah. Yeah. Year 9, that would be in England.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, you're starting. At some point I had a girlfriend then, and at some point I just gave it up. I'm like, this is not working,
Yeah.
And then so suddenly I'm in a relationship with a woman. And so that process is really challenging to describe. But I think this is Casey, this is a really cool way that you've brought my thoughts together here, because, okay, so you have the vulnerability, you have the shaky footing. And then, even though I would have denied it, I had some pretty negative views and experiences of myself as a gay person that, let's just say, I was in a position where I was susceptible to different ideas about that. So,
right.
So I came into the Sufi group, and like I said before, it's like, I'm thinking, oh, I can be gay here. And then very gradually, and I could write a dissertation about this. I mean, I might someday write a book about this. It's sort of like, how did it happen that 2 years later I married a woman? When the guru did not say to me, you have to marry a woman. He did not say to me, you can't be gay. But he created all of the conditions so that I would feel, in order to come close to him, which was the goal of the student, that to marry a woman would be the best course of action for me. And that in so doing, I had to, strike bargains with myself. I had to justify it to myself. I had to convince myself it was right. And I had to take my gayness and I had to put it somewhere, And
yeah, there's so much here to there's so much here to go over, especially because the kind of the first interactions that you've talked about when being introduced to this group is the idea that they are very supportive of the LGBT community. And yes, obviously there's something that changes over your time within this group that ends with you in a heterosexual marriage. So there's so much to go over, but
yes,
but it's I think it's important to discuss really, for me, kind of listening to your story, it sounds like your timeline is well, obviously this is very general, but you've had this childhood abuse, and then a few years later, after your granddad passes, you realize your sexuality to yourself, and then yes, a couple of years after that, you kind of start to discuss that with close family and friends and people in a kind of safe a space as you can find.
Yes.
And then after that, you realize this abuse. So you realize it's not maybe linked to your sexuality, but actually linked to something that you experienced when you were much younger. And then from that, there's kind of maybe some substance misuse or alcohol misuse that leads to you going to a treatment center. And then from that, you kind of start a PhD at the age of 29. So how do you make that jump from kind of Kmart to actually going into your PhD?
Well, I was in the Southwest. I had restarted my life, and at a certain point I just was like, I got to do something. So I think I was maybe 27, and I literally one day packed my car and drove away from where I was. I had gone to the treatment center in Arizona. I had stayed there for almost 2 years, and my parents in Indiana, I packed the car and went back. And I thought, and I applied for a PhD in my father's old department. So he was an education researcher, and I applied to work to be a student in his department. And it felt to me like I was finding, kind of coming back home and like starting over. And I was excited, and I was really successful in the PhD program. And I did a year of it, of the classroom work. And after a year is when I met the Diami Tarikat. So I was a year into school, and then that year, after the second year of school, I went back and forth driving 4 hours between. And then there's this thing which I'm sure you've heard of called love bombing. So I was really kind of showered with, so much love and attention. And then the guru bought me, I want to say gurus in quotes. So we have other names for him. Every time I say guru, it's not capital G, but he bought me a ticket to come with the group to Germany, because in Germany, there was a satellite community, and there still is. So we were in Dortmund, and it was a whole love bombing thing. So I had been sort of courted, and at the end of the second year, at the end of the first year, how does this work? Oh, right. At the end of the first year, I met him. So I was in my second year of PhD program when I was driving back and forth. And then at the end of that year, I asked the sheikh if I could quit school and move there. And he said, yes. So I did.
So all of those things that have happened, we've gone kind of just relayed the timeline out there. And you've spoken about these inappropriate relationships that you were finding yourself in as well. Yes. And all of these things that lead up to you meeting this group. Yes. You could write a whole book just about those experiences before you even reached this beautiful building that you were kind of taken to and shown around, and then experienced the love bombing and everything that comes after that. 23 years that comes after these experiences. So
I think people could understand. I think anyone could, well, maybe not anyone, but the dominant feeling that I had with the Sufis in the first year and a half was protection, was safety and protection. So I had such a feeling in the world of being vulnerable, and that had played out in so many ways. And when I came to the group, there was a modesty, and there was a feeling that no one was on the make. So the part of me that lived in the world that was sort of always on the make, or like always felt sexually vulnerable, that part of my life was absent when I was with this group of people. And in other words, the vulnerability I felt was relieved when I was with this group of people. I felt protected. I felt like there was sort of a ethical core, which was conservative and modest. So we dressed modestly, not in a uniform, but like wearing long pants. And I felt like here is where I need to be. And I liked it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you kind of you finally felt like you had that safe environment that you talked about looking for all that time.
Yes.
It's so difficult everybody needs a space like that. And and when you find one, it must be so hard to even try and find fault or be critical about your surroundings when you just feel so comfortable and at ease with everything, and finally feel like you found something you've been searching for close to a decade. But the thing you mentioned before about kind of the similarities between the the kind of abuse and manipulation from your grandfather that translated into this guru that you ended up spending so much time with almost sounds similar to like the phenomenon of cult hopping, when somebody goes from one group to another without even realizing that that's what's happened to them.
Yes.
And even down to things like somebody joins a multi-level marketing group and then leaves and says, oh, that was horrible, I'm never going to be part of another MLM, but here's a new business that I've started for myself underneath this new group called Amway, and then it just ends up being another MLM. So I think there's a lot to be said about people almost finding comfort in traumatic experiences that they've had, because it must kind of feel almost just familiar in some way to go.
So.
And
I think there's a lot of lessons in here about how deeply affecting childhood abuse is. It is really hard to, unwind and transform that experience. Really hard,
Yeah. And so when you go to this place and you meet these people and you walk into this building and you have this sense of kind of awe and you feel comfortable, I don't think that there should be any blame placed on you for then opening yourself up to the group and giving yourself over to the way that the group works and the hierarchy itself, and kind of adhering to the principles and practices of this group, which must happen because you end up staying for such a long time.
Yeah, and then there's, I think what's easy, how do I say this? I don't want to underestimate the significance of some little interactions that I had early on and the role that the followers play. So the guru stands back, the guru is elusive, but then his followers fall into a perfectly choreographed, not like they don't even know what they're doing. They're not actively recruiting, but they, in their minds, but they believe that they have the answer for you. And if you show an openness, they will move in. So this guru, he now has 3 wives. At the time he had 2. I want to say that he, just to fill out the picture here, this is a man who grew up Jewish in Peoria, Illinois. He's an American white guy. And he has 2 wives, and I have come to see them as the master recruiters. So imagine, like, I come into this environment, I am, really suspicious, but also desperately needy. I'm concerned about being accepted as gay. I'm also concerned about being accepted as a person who is kind of not in great shape, because so many, I remember at the time thinking, so many spiritual groups, like everyone seems so perfect and they're all meditating. And I thought, are they going to accept me as like kind of the walking wounded? Can I be myself here, in the sense of like, I'm working through stuff and it's hard and I'm messy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or so I'm walking up to this beautiful, I'm on the farmland, it's Southern Illinois. It's like rolling. I suppose it might look like some of the gently rolling parts of England, and it's green, and I'm walking up to this beautiful old farmhouse, and I'm meeting his first wife, and she is so warm and so gentle, and she has, there's chickens in the yard, and her house is so cute, and I just feel like I'm in a really special place. And she sits me down, and I tell her I bare my soul to her. I say, I'm really worried about these things. She holds my hands and she looks at me, and she says, I am the same. I was an abused kid, and here I am in this beautiful place. So she testifies without me knowing it and without her knowing it. She raises my trust in that moment about 10 times by telling me her story, by taking my hand and basically communicating to me, you will be safe here. Now, whereas if the guru had tried to do that, I would have been like, no, like, get away from me. This is weird. But she did it, and I trusted her.
And she's like in this idyllic place that to you is so appealing and safe.
Yes, everything was safe. And so she sold me in that moment the whole vision. And I remember every moment of that, because I left that interaction feeling like, oh my God, maybe this is real.
Yeah. And this could be me. And this is something that I can have this for myself.
Yes.
Do you ever think back on that experience and wonder if she kind of didn't have herself together as much as she seemed to?
Well, it's amazing because that woman became my boss for years, because the community here in my little town, we're in a little town, bought a coffee shop and kind of developed it over time into a very well-known kind of vegetarian restaurant and bakery. And she became the manager, a very visible local business owner, manager of this place. And she's really vivacious and very charismatic. And lots of people love this woman because of her personality. Well, now, especially since I've left the group, I've come to see her as, I mean, I could tell you so many stories about this woman. Like, she can be very vicious. She can be,
right.
She's dissociated in some of the darkest ways. Having known me for 23 years, till the very end, she did not ask for my perspective. I mean, she will back the guru's behavior, no matter how dark, no matter how abusive, which it got very abusive, no matter how dysfunctional. She almost died, literally almost died from anemia because she wasn't physically taking care of herself. I mean, she is the role model for how to interact with the guru, and as dysfunctional as it is, and she is sort of like the gaslighter of the whole enterprise, because if you don't do it like her, then you're not trying hard enough. I mean, there's a lot of stories to tell her, but yes, she is not what she seems, and it is very hard to see through it. Very hard,
especially when it's kind of presented to you in such an ideal way. Like, I have this, beautiful home, and this is my beautiful life, and I've had those similar experiences that you had as a child, those awful traumatic things that happened to you, but it doesn't matter now because my life is all sorted out.
It's all sorted.
And I think it's just important to just mention that was never the case, or at least at least not forever. Maybe it was for a certain amount of time. For her, maybe it really was sorted for a certain amount of time, but judging from what you've just said there, it either never was or didn't stick.
No, and again, there's a lot of details here, but the restaurant, because of her management style, is now being sued by the Department of Labor. The United States Department of Labor is suing this restaurant for labor practices, because people are, like in most cults, we are underpaid, expected to work too many hours, and that ripples down to other. Not everyone who works there are cult members, but there have been a lot of bad experiences working for her. And I mean, it's not really my story to tell, but she was the first wife. So imagine being married to a guy, and then gradually he takes on this mantle of being a guru. And part of that is that God tells him to marry another woman.
Oh yeah, that would be.
Right.
Oh,
So
that would be just soul destroying. I think that'd be so difficult.
yeah. So she's lived through that. And then she lived through it again because 15 years later, he took on a third wife. And, it just kept building. So, yeah, by the time you're in close, you are, subscribed to this experience where all kinds of really crazy, horrible things begin to happen. But we are prepared and schooled and encouraged to digest them as something that an enlightened leader is allowed to do because their behavior is divinely inspired.
And the fact that he goes on to take not only a second but a third wife, and she remains within this marriage with him, is testament to testimony that is what happens. It's almost as if these actions that these things that the guru does, they go unpunished or unquestioned because she's still in this marriage with him, despite him going to find other multiple partners to be with. That would just be absolutely heartbreaking for me if my partner told me that he was going to marry 2 other women. It's and I understand that is part of some people's culture. It's not just not something that I understand. And it would be really upsetting for me if my partner came and said to me, I'd like to marry another person. I'd be like, okay.
And that's why I've started to see her as she is so powerful in this group, because she shows you what you should be able to endure. And she does it with a smile on her face. And when she is sad or angry, she hides it, because she must.
Yeah, and it's really sad. It doesn't excuse the treatment that she's putting on other people.
Yes.
But it's almost like when kids are severely bullied at school, so they'll go and bully someone smaller than them, or somebody that they think is vulnerable enough for them to go on to bully. I don't know if it's trying to gain back some power somewhere, or to be able to make decisions for yourself that aren't dictated by somebody else. I don't know where this mentality comes from when people are being treated a certain way by somebody, so they'll go and inflict that same treatment on others. I'm sure there's so much academic writing that's been done about that. But you've arrived at this building, and your first impressions are kind of like, this is the most beautiful place. These people are lovely. Their ideals are in line with mine. This is what I've been searching for. What is your first interaction or your first experience with the guru himself?
Okay, so he would show up, and there's a story of me when you walk into this main room. There was kind of a big raised chair for him, and I had never encountered anything like this, but like I said, it was beautiful. And one of the first things that I did was I went and sat in it, which turns out was a horrible faux pas. Like you don't do that, but I didn't know, so I plopped down in it, and he kept his distance from me. I mean, I think he's a very astute, studier of people. So I think that he was going to let me kind of have a lot of space, and we didn't have a lot of close interactions for quite a while. At one point, he wrote me a letter when I was going back and forth to Indiana, and he said, "Come back." And it was just warm and inviting. And so he developed this really, so I'm interacting with all these other students. We're going to the farm and working, and I'm interacting with him. And then he was very, as you've heard the story many times, he's extremely charismatic. Like he can talk in complete paragraphs, and we would have these gatherings and everyone would dress up and he would play acoustic guitar and sing songs that he wrote. And the songs that he wrote were sort of, rock and roll, spiritual, and and we would chant. You chant the names of God and in Arabic. And the other thing is that the group every single morning they would get up at dawn and do the Islamic prayers and do something called dhikr, which is like long, an hour of chanting and the names of God, and then meditation. And so every morning there was like an hour and a half program, and everybody came, and it was, oh my God, I loved that, and, within a few months, I had, like, as hard as I worked in graduate school where I was very successful, I had decided I can use my skills and my smarts and my creativity, and I can really pour myself into doing this really well. So I thought, well, I can do this. I can, I approached it in a way that ended up sort of backfiring on me, because I thought like I can accomplish this. Like I can get up every morning and I can do this the best, because I just kind of operated that way.
Right.
And,
yeah.
Graduate school is competitive and American culture is competitive. So I thought I can do that. I can be really good at this. That's what I thought. Right. So I learned the prayers really quickly, and I'm good at languages. So I learned the Arabic. And when Ramadan came up for the first time during those years, it moves across the calendar. But at that point, it was in January, and I fasted for Ramadan by myself in Indiana, and I broke fast, in my statistics class, and I went for it,
So you really embraced all of
Yes.
the practices of this group, and you said, I'm going to do this perfectly, even when I'm not being supervised by the kind of people in those positions of power within the group. You took it upon yourself to be the kind of perfect follower.
Yep. I said, this is who I am. And it connects with what the idea that you were just saying, which is that you become kind of the bully. I became one of the kind of enforcers of protocol. Like, in other words, I would be the guy who would sort of police you.
Right.
Hey, don't sit on the chair, or because my standard was 100%. So I became a point of tension for, let me just say, for the almost everybody else who couldn't do it perfectly, and that caused so much tension. In my family, in my marriage, in my parenting, there's so many stories of me upholding whatever perfection I imagined that there was supposed to be. And of course, I was never given any accolades for that, because that's, in a cultic environment, I just was set up for more and more abuse. But I became the enforcer, kind of the bullying, judgmental enforcer of everyone else's, imperfect commitments. God, it's hard. That stuff's hard to stomach. When I think
I
about
wonder though if that's common across other people that have been through experiences of high demand control groups.
Yeah,
it would be interesting to know if that's something that other people feel they have to take upon themselves as well, kind of the role of the gatekeeper, or to feel, to take sort of Jehovah's Witnesses as an example. Are they being as modest and as pure and as devout as they possibly can be, to be as close to Jehovah as possible?
Yes.
Even when nobody's looking, are they doing those things so that they don't feel like they're letting themselves down spiritually? So I wonder if it is something that's quite common across across high demand groups. One more quick message from this month's sponsors, Netlandish and their incredible software Help You Find Me, a digital if I go missing file that allows you to share personal information with family and friends, putting your mind and theirs at ease. Using Help You Find Me could be the missing puzzle piece in solving the mystery if you or someone you care for should disappear, allowing you to access this information weeks before law enforcement in the hours that matter the most. For more information, visit helpyoufind.me/HYFM cult. That's helpyoufind.me/HYFM cult to find out more today. But did you realize at the time that there could have been some parallels between you seeking out older men who you know, and being in those less than ideal relationships with men that have these roles in life, and you're kind of, did you realize that there was some similarities with this guru that you'd found?
You know, that was always in the background. Wait, I should ask you, am I allowed to curse or not?
I always say, this is your story. You can use whatever language you would like to use.
Because I naturally curse.
So that's absolutely fine. Yeah, the episodes are always marked as explicit content due to the themes that we often discuss.
Yeah, all right. Well, great. Thank you. I just lost my train of thought. Okay, so
we're talking about the similarities.
Yeah, I didn't tell you. That's right. I didn't tell you the fucked up part that I did not mention was that I know it's weird that I'm laughing, but that's what I do sometimes. Okay, so my grandfather was a minister. I forgot to mention that.
Okay.
So that's completes this whole full circle, right? So yes. Okay, thankfully I wasn't sexually attracted to the guru, but there are so many weird sexual dynamics and like I think that they really inform the story of how I ended up in a heterosexual marriage, is because the whole community was really gender binaried, you know. So it's like there's a men's group, there's a women's group, there's the men's side, there's the women's side, there's the men's prayer line, there's the women's prayer line, and there's not. And then he had a way of mocking gender diversity. So he upheld a certain masculinity, and I needed to fit there. And I'm not a very binary kind of guy. I mean, first of all, I'm gay. Second of all, I'm like, you know, I'm kind of a queer musical theater. I'm like all those things, you know, like, and what I found over time is that I needed to suppress. He sort of micro bullied me over time to become less like that. And I think that really led me into sort of trying to become a man. And it was really deeply connected in ways that I couldn't even think of, much less articulate, you know, related to my experience of having gay relationships, which didn't quite feel comfortable for me, and my attraction to older men. And I mean, I was fine with shutting that part of myself down.
Right.
Because my experiences there had been difficult.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that hard for me to decide that to marry this woman might take these conflicts that I had been feeling over time and kind of put them into a little pocket, and that I would be more comfortable. So, and then it was interesting because my friend who introduced me to the group, he's a gay guy. And when he saw this happening to me, he freaked the fuck out, because he's like, what are you doing? Like, he was not about to compromise his gayness. And when he saw me being kind of gently coerced into this heterosexual marriage, he confronted me directly, and my response to him was like a good cult member to just say, like, look, no one's forcing me. Like, this is what I want. Like, what's wrong with you? You're freaking the fuck out about this. Like why are you being all super charged up about it? Like, I put it back on him, and you know what? He walked out the door and never came back.
Yeah, like, I'm getting married and you should be happy for me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, like, you don't understand. And then in my mind, deciding in my mind that he was lost in the world. You know, he's lost in his own compulsions. He's not strong enough to submit, like all the things that I thought to myself to judge him by. Right.
And this lady that went on to become your wife, and did you choose each other, or was it kind of like a matching ceremony, or were you recommended to each other? How did that relationship start?
We found each other, and he, as a masterful kind of American master, literally does everything correctly so that he can not be culpable. So he never tells you, he never instructs you. He says, no, she and I decided, we came to an agreement. We went to him, we asked permission, and he said, well, okay, like, I'm not going to stop you. And then, I struggled through all those years to try to have a sexual relationship with her. And we're both very loyal people. So for 20 years, we tried to make this work. We justified it to ourselves. At a certain point, about 5 years ago, I was at a point where I'm like, these are the words I'm going to say now do not reflect my actual thinking about it now. But at the time I thought, well, maybe I'm just gay. Like, am I just gay? Or should I keep trying to make this, work? And in the ethic of our community, we were always supposed to go to the guru to ask, major life issues, decisions, whatever. And over time, I more and more avoided that because he was so abusive to me, but still I was supposed to want to do that. So I went to him and I asked him that question directly. I said, am I just gay, or is this, because my marriage was very uncomfortable. Everything was uncomfortable. Everything in my life was uncomfortable, but I blamed myself for that. So I went to him to ask, and he said to me, do you really think that you would find a man who is a Sufi who would live the life that you live? So he, instead of questioning whether, this path that we were on was best for me, he assumed that it was, and he asked me if I really expected to find a man to share this life with me. And I said, well, of course I don't. And I humbled myself, and I left the room deciding that I would stay married, because
that's so heartbreaking, though, that you had that thought about yourself, that you didn't feel like worthy, or that you wouldn't be able to find somebody that would make you feel comfortable and happy.
Yes, and
that he encouraged that thought, and probably spoon-fed those feelings as well. That's really, really, really heartbreaking when you hear people think and see themselves in that way. This guru, I mean, you said that he's like a white American man.
Yeah.
What is his upbringing? What's his journey? How has he ended up being the guru of a movement that has its own community? And what is this man's story?
Well, I mean, I can give you a few highlights. He was brought up Jewish in pretty in a smart and pretty well-off family in Illinois. He came up north in a town called Peoria. He ended up coming down to Carbondale for college. He was very early in his life interested in meditation and other practices. So he was involved with a bunch of different early movements. He was precocious. He was really smart. He's very well spoken. And, I've learned a lot there. Do you know a writer named Dan Shaw? He writes about narcissism and cults. And anyway, he writes about this personality, and there's something about this man. He's definitely a narcissist, but he just sort of went on to find his own, he found legitimacy by being sort of given this spiritual mantle by a guru in Bangladesh. So he comes sort of legitimized with this, like, I was given this. So
right.
He paints himself as sort of like, I'm just following out my responsibility and my promise. Like he doesn't, he emphatically denies that he has any personal stake in this. He often will say something like, do you think that I would want this position? He paints himself as a martyr to his responsibility.
Right.
And, I would just describe him as an exceptionally good salesperson. And I don't, and one of the things I've learned about him since I left the group, because, when you're in it, I can't see these things, but since I left, I've heard several stories. There's 150 ex-members floating around, and I am the first person to speak publicly about my experience in this
okay
group. So there's a lot of people who have left with conflicts, and everyone has remained silent because there's a fear that he will, I don't know what he'll do, but everyone's, people are afraid, or, they just want to move on. So they're not interested in speaking publicly. But I really believe, is incapable of seeing his own culpability. So, for example, he is widely known for, and here I want to be a little careful, because let me just say that there's a lot of stories of him crossing boundaries with women.
Okay.
And when he was confronted directly by a very brave person that he is responsible for doing this, in this particular example, he said, I would not do anything differently, and my behavior is justified. So basically, he has this whole thing set up so that if you have a problem with his behavior, if you feel conflicted about it, if you feel pain, if you're hurt, any anger, any conflicted feeling that you have towards him and his behavior, it's because you are not seeing it for its divinely inspired value as a teaching mechanism in your life.
Okay.
I know that's quite common, but he has, to a grievance, to a person, used the words, I would not change what I did. And I believe that he is still in that place. He's trapped there through narcissism, or however you want to define that.
Yeah.
And I don't know the whole story about why that is about him,
Yeah, I just thought it'd be interesting to kind of let the listeners know his personal story, because in areas like Illinois in America, I know it's Christianity that is the most prevalent religion in those areas of America. You've got your Roman Catholics and your Baptists, and I know that in those parts there are smaller populations of Muslims and Jewish people, Buddhists, and Hindu groups, but primarily it is Roman Catholicism. So I kind of just wondered how this man found himself the leader of a branch of Sufism. It's just interesting to kind of pinpoint that.
He has epic stories about it. Like, he tells an epic story of how he was sort of a quasi Hindu guy for a long time, and and then he fell in with this he had dreams of being called to this guru in Bangladesh, and then there are very mystical stories of this guru in Bangladesh appeared to him in a dream, and somebody found him in New York City and gave him a plane ticket. Like there's this level of sort of Jonah and the whale kinds of stories of
like divine intervention.
Yeah, divine intervention and destiny, and how he ends up in Bangladesh, and part of his story of giving himself over to Islam is just his surrender to his guru. So he always uses that as a way to teach his in quotes students, which is that if somebody has an issue with some directive or some way that we are living, he just says like, wow, I didn't equivocate. I didn't argue with my guru when he said go up onto the roof and learn and read the whole Quran tonight. I just tried. I just did it.
Yeah.
And so he's always using his own ethic as a way to show you where you are falling short. And so his story just adds romance and how a little American Midwestern Jewish boy became a Sufi sheikh is just part of like God's destiny. Does that make sense? I mean, it's a very romantic story. His is.
Yeah, it definitely sounds it. And it sounds almost like idealistic, like his wife, that when you spoke to her in her home, and it paints this picture of kind of perfection. And also then, like, who are we to question him when he's had these experiences?
Yeah.
And he's obviously closer to God than we are, and if we want to reach that same level of enlightenment that he has reached, then we have to follow him without question.
Yes. And also that he has already completed the work of surrender, which means we just have to work harder and sleep less and give more of our time and our money and infinitely, just so we can reach the level that he reached simply in that moment of surrendering completely to his guru. So that's part of what justifies how hard we work and how hard he doesn't work.
Yeah, well, that's also seems to be a common theme across these groups as well. So you go in, you meet this guru, he writes a letter to you asking you to come back. You spend a bit of time going to kind of 4 hours to and from your PhD and this community.
Yes.
And then you said that as time went on, the abuse that you and some of the other members of this group endured, it ramped up over time. So I'm wondering if that level of abuse was always happening within the group, or if something was changing with this guru as time was going on, or there were some shifts within the group that were causing these things to happen.
That it's very hard. I mean, I was in for such a long time that it is really hard to trace that. I think that he was always extremely hard on a couple of the closest members, particularly his second wife. She had become sort of the executive director. She was sort of the person who micromanaged all of the projects so that he could, sort of be guru-ish. And he was always very hard on her. But it was very slow. I mean, he is smart enough to very gradually let you commit yourself. And then the more committed you are, the more he can really throttle you. And I became a person who was visibly humiliated quite a lot. And I think that was directly related to the fact that I would take it. I mean, there were plenty of people through the years who were just like, fuck this, I'm out of here. Lots and lots and lots of people, and there were a lot of dramatic exits, and there were people leaving literally in the middle of the night and disappearing. There were And then at first, when the group came, there were no children. And then gradually over time, there were families with kids. There were families who moved from other towns. I'd say the group grew to the largest it would become around 2008, 2010. And we had our own homeschool group. Homeschooling laws in the US are very relaxed. So
yes, yeah.
we could just create our own school, and we raised and I had a daughter in 2002, and the guru gave her name, and this was considered sort of another sort of performative way to show that we trusted him, and then we raised our children together. And one of the stories, you have probably heard this on another podcast, but one of the stories that I tell about my sort of the peak of my own dissociative relationship with him was that I had always been a musician, and I played piano and I wrote songs and played the drums. And when he found out that I was a drummer, he that day took me to a store and bought a drum set and put me behind the drum set, brought out his electric guitar, and we made a band. There was already a little bit of a band, but now I was the first drummer, and now there was a drummer, and we had a band. Okay. And I was in this band for years, and he was legendarily bad at parts of music.
I was just waiting for you to either say like, and he was incredible, or and he was terrible.
No,
I didn't know which way it was going to go. So,
it's exactly. I know there's a lot of comedy in here. Now I have to say, have you seen the Nixium documentary?
Yes, yeah.
They're the scenes of them playing volleyball.
Right.
It's exactly the same. When I saw those scenes of the volleyball games, I was like, fuck, this is exactly like band practice used to be. So, so we'd be playing in the band, and I was so privileged to be his drummer. Like I had like mythical ideas of like, I'm his rhythm keeper, and I'm so intimate with him, and right,
But this guru, like the leader of this group, the man himself, he's gone out and he's bought you a drum kit, and he said to you, I want you to have the responsibility of playing the drums with me and being in this band with me.
Right. Exactly. I mean, like I got this special time just with him every week. And then the way it was like the volleyball game is that, everyone would crowd in just to listen, and people would dance. And it was, and every note he played, it was as if it was the divine essence of melody. Right. And I too, for years, I sat there and I convinced myself, I did everything I could for years to try to adhere to his way of playing music. And that included crazy ass tempos, and he could at least sing, and he could play his guitar. But he always played the same. He was nowhere close to any kind of sort of virtuoso musician. But the worst was that I'm the timekeeper, but I had to also follow him. Okay, this is like a logical, fucking horrible Rubik's Cube hell, what I'm about to explain to you. So like, I'm the timekeeper, which means I keep the time. However, I also have to follow him because he's the guru, and I must submit myself to him. He is at any moment liable to turn around and yell at me, which he did thousands of times, for being too slow or too fast. He could not keep tempo. He would drop notes. He would suddenly do a 2-note. He didn't know that he did that. So he was always yelling at me for shit that he was doing. And in my mind, I had to, with all my might, convince myself that he was right. So I lived in this unending threat of knowing that he was fucking it up, blaming myself, and trying to follow him. So like, I covered his mistakes for years in that band because I have a really good sense of rhythm. I have a good sense of melody. I know when something's out of tune. I know when we're in the wrong key. If any instrument, I'm that annoying drummer. Like if any instrument is like playing the wrong note, I'm like, you should be playing a B flat. Like, and I'm, and so I was trapped there. And then he would hurl verbal abuse at me. And then when we did 3 tours of Europe with this band. And he
Wow, 3 tours.
Yeah.
How many? What was the audience size?
It was different. I mean, we play like little clubs, mostly Germany. We played Belgium. We played France, Switzerland, Poland, like little clubs, like little blues clubs. And we never got over to the UK. But he would literally introduce me as, this is Tarek. That was my name. Tarek on the drums. Everything is his fault. Right. And I would laugh. And he would laugh, and it was the big joke.
Do you think he knew he was bad and he needed a full guy?
I don't know. I really, like I said before, I really believe that he believed that everything he did was.
Yeah, if the narcissism is severe as you've described it, then he probably thought he really was amazing, especially when he's got all the members bolstering that opinion of himself by coming and dancing and witnessing the band playing and all of that stuff, and you just had to endure. Oh, that's awful.
And then my wife and maybe even worse is my daughter had to watch for years him treat me that way. And then it's exactly like, that's why when I saw Keith Raniere with that fucking volleyball, like, and that he's like instructing people how to play volleyball. You're like, and they're like, they're watching him like, oh my gosh, thank you for teaching me. And I'm like, God, it's so horrible to see that moment of dissociation where Keith positions himself as an expert on something so random as volleyball. And he is like teaching the devotees how to play, and they're just imbibing it as if they are learning some sort of spiritual tenet. I mean, it's so nauseating to watch that,
I mean, it's got to be difficult for you on many levels to go through these experiences, because if you're musically inclined, not only have you got to endure following his lead when he's so wrong, but you also have to listen to him being so wrong. You then have to endure the emotional, spiritual and verbal abuse that he's inflicting on you, and then you also have to endure it whilst your daughter's present and witnessing you going through those things as well.
And then you take that whole experience and you decide that it's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is definitely I get these sometimes during these interviews. I get this moment where I get like I call it like butt clench syndrome, like where something makes you feel so uncomfortable that you just realize that you're clenching your butt, like, oh no, like a cringy almost uncomfortableness. And that is exactly what just happened to me then when you were kind of explaining that experience in particular, especially because it's like public shaming. You're having to go through these experiences, not even on a one-to-one in a private room. That would be so uncomfortable and so difficult to experience, but to go through it in a room full of people, not always just the core group itself, but with random members of the public who have come to watch your live show, like it's there's so many layers of why that would make anybody feel just ashamed and uncomfortable and unworthy and less than, and all of those things that he wants you to feel so that he can remain in these positions of power, I'm assuming.
And you know what I realized as I'm talking is that was part of me being able to do that was part of my pride at doing it perfectly, which is that I became kind of the role model for how to endure his behavior.
It's Yeah, and it's such a common theme that we hear about on this show, and something that I think is another one of these things that's quite common across high demand control groups. This is just one example of a coercive tool that this man has used as well against you personally, and this is just your story, and you've spoken about how people just left in the night, and how there's been 100 to 150, probably more people that have been through the group and left. And when you decided to move there full time, what are the sleeping arrangements in this place? How many buildings are there? How is this place funded? Where does the money come from?
The money comes from his followers. He does not have an income. He might be, it's all very secretive, but there's a big house in the town. So there's a town called Carbondale with the university. It's got a university, sort of a small city, 30,000 people. There's a big house here. The farm is about 15 miles south in another little, it's not in a village, it's just in the rural area. And then there's some businesses. The community owns about 10 to 12 properties in the town now. There's the restaurant, there's a little grocery store, and there's a worship center, which is separate now. He fed for many years this fantasy that hundreds of people would come, and that never came to be. So it sort of had so it's dispersed throughout the town. There's not like really a compound. There's not a place where everyone lives. So the initial house where I lived when I first came to town was just a big old Victorian house that had, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 bedrooms. So we each had our own room. And then the guru lived, he shares houses with wives. So there are 3 different houses that he moves among with his wives, but he mostly lives out at the farm now. But I mean, part of what's crazy about my story is that I'm 2 miles from them. Like,
oh, right now.
Yeah. Like
wow, okay.
There's it's like living in a little town with 50 exes, you know? Like,
yeah, that's,
yeah.
You must see them all the time.
I do. I'm going to school and I pass the guru's sister walking her dog, and then I go to the grocery store, and there's this one guy who won't look at me, and so yeah, there's and they, because I have been you know, visibly speaking about my experiences. I don't want to say I'm speaking out against the group. I'm not. I'm just verbalizing my experience, you know. But I am seen by all of them as the enemy, and they will not look at me or speak to me when I see them publicly, which is fine with me. I don't want to, you know?
Yeah.
But they know better. They have been instructed, or they just know to not engage with me, because I have, if they say something silly to me, I will put it on social media. Mm-hmm. And that's the way that I have gained some protection for myself. But yeah. I share a little town with all these people.
I suppose you're like the Christian version of an apostate as well, in yes. in the eyes of these people that are still within the fold.
Yeah, when you're in the group and somebody leaves, the only way to you know maintain your own narrative is to believe that they are weak or crazy or something. I mean, you can't. No one ever leaves with the blessing of the group of like, oh yeah, they've gone on and they're having a great life. So their narrative about me will be that I'm crazy, that I am trying to I'm trying to create my own guru. I'm self-obsessed. I mean, there's a long list of ways that they will portray me, but more than anything, they will try to just erase me. Like he won't sit around talking about me. He will try to pretend with his current followers that I am having no effect and do not matter, and that my experience is not real.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah. And I wonder if those people, if there's some of them who are envious of you that you've gone and you've spoken out and you're so clearly kind of free of that coercion. I wonder if there's people that are like, I wonder if he is right, because some of the things I've experienced are a little bit similar to things that he's spoken about. Or I wonder if all of them or most of them are like, he's absolutely wrong. I've never experienced anything like that at all. He couldn't be further from the truth. It would be interesting. I'd just love to sit down with some of these people and just pick their thoughts and ask them what they really think. And it would be interesting to know. Do you think?
Well, I think they would all have a party line about the guru. They would have to dismiss me. I think you're right. I think inside people's minds, because I was not only was I a trusted member, but just my personality, I'm an honest person, so like I'm a pretty open guy. So I think that there are a subset of the people still in that group who are kind of like, they know somewhere inside of them that I am not of malicious intent. But who knows? I mean, I know that when you're in the group, you have to toe the line just for your own sanity, because the minute you let things get too conscious, you threaten your life. You don't know, like, it's too scary, So It's too scary.
So you've moved into the group permanently. You've married your wife. You've had your daughter together in 2002. Did you go on to have any more children?
No, just her.
Okay, and you've spoken a little bit about the music. I'm just wondering if there were any other notable memories that have contributed to you leaving the group some 17 months ago and coming to speak publicly about them.
Well, let me just say that I think the fact that I'm the first person to speak out of this group tells you the gravity of people's experiences, because people were really hurt, and people have been really hurt by this person. And let me just say that since I have left the group and spoken publicly, I have heard a lot of stories, and people have come forward to me to say a lot of things, and there's the beginnings of some collective healing. But there are a lot of people who left 15 years ago, never told a soul what happened. And it's like, it's very damaging. And I have been starting lately to talk to local people, just kind of, like local liberal religious leaders and the university and people who still have involvement with the group in some way, because there's a lot of volunteerism. People go to the farm. There's an herbal business. Like, there's strong ties with the town and the group, and people who have lived here 25 years and always known the group, and no stories have been told. So I'm speaking to people and they're like, oh my God, like, I had a feeling like things were always weird, like things are secretive. And I am having this role of illuminating things. And it's been really, really scary at times, because I know that I'm the target. But I also believe that this leader is not, I think that public opinion has shifted against them, largely due to the social media work that I've been doing, but also, the labor suit against the restaurant, that was very public and everybody knew about it, and that had a big effect on them. And then for the first time in 27 years they've been here, there have been some public acknowledgments by local institutions that they are not associating with the Daimi Tariqat. And these are kind of long stories, but let's just say that they were given an award by the university that was rescinded because there was such a public outcry. So social media has had a very big swing against the group. And now at this point, if I were to go on to like one of the local Facebook pages and say like, I love this, the restaurant, there would be about 30 or there would be a big pile on of negative reactions to somebody publicly advocating that people go, for example, to the restaurant. And like, one of the things that happened is that when I left the group, it was because of COVID. It was because I was living with my mother in a house about 2 miles away. So we had physical space.
Yeah.
The lockdown happened. I finally had a moment to breathe. And through that, I was able to put some thoughts together. And finally, my wife and I were like, whoa, exactly. And about, I don't know, 6 weeks later, I wrote a piece for Medium, and it was really scary. And I called it, I just left a cult after 23 years. And my family kind of freaked out because the cult word was way too intense for them at that point. But I pushed send and I published it. And what happened, which I did not predict, is that 3,000 people read it.
Wow. Okay.
And that literally, when I went to the grocery store, I went to the little health food store here in town, people were like, oh my God, you're that guy who wrote that story.
Mm-hmm.
So what I realized rather quickly was that there was a huge hunger to know about this group.
Yeah.
Because everyone knows the group. They're weird. They're secretive. They seem fine, but then, there's literally thousands of people in this town with this sinking feeling in their belly of like, what's really going on?
Going on? Yeah, like they're anti-vaccination. He has 3 wives.
Right.
It's I think curiosity in general would be piqued by just a small number of these things that you've mentioned. Like, he takes his band on tour around Europe. Like, what kind of music are they into? What kind of music do they write? What jobs do people have in this community? How is the community funded? How is everyone able to live there? Like, do the men sleep in one room and the women sleep in another? Like, do they all share one big room? How does it work?
Nobody knows. And I mean, you can see the damage just caused by secrecy, like the amount of tension that it caused in this little town. And so when I came out with like, hey, I know a lot of stuff, people were like, oh my God, like there was this huge wave of not just interest, but also support. So that even though I was feeling scared for my safety and I was just scared all the time, I would go to, kind of the rival grocery store in town, and people were like, oh my God, thank you.
That's great. That's great.
It was great.
It's funny because it sounds like one half of the town is like, oh, tell us everything, and the other half of people that are involved in the group that you're talking about, like, don't tell them anything more. So it's painting quite a picture, really. And do you feel like leaving this group and speaking out about the experiences is giving you maybe back some of the power that you feel like you've been looking for your whole life, sort of chasing or trying to pin down in these relationships and experiences that you found yourself in?
Well, I can't, as much as PTSD is real, like, in other words, like I'm uncomfortable and jittery a lot of the times, but what has happened in my life is indescribable. So like, even though COVID is like horrible here and we're still locked down, my marriage ended amicably. We are friends. In fact, she's in the UK right now with her new boyfriend.
Oh, lovely. Having a little romantic getaway.
Yeah. No, I mean, no, he's English. He lives there. She found him online. She's over there,
living
trying
in
to learn,
perpetual rainfall.
Yeah, trying to learn about tea and stuff like that, And I'm here with a new relationship. In fact, half an hour ago when he came in. So like, I'm with a man now, which is like so many levels of joyful for me, right? I learned in the last year to make music again on my own terms. And Brilliant. As you've heard, I'm about to release a record under the title Quit Your Cult. I'm back in graduate school, going to finish my PhD, and I'm in something called performance studies. So I'm working on a script to do some one-person performances about my childhood and about the cult. Like, I'm going to be studying and learning about what I went through and writing about it and creating. Like, everything is back, like, so quickly. I have this rich performative creative life that and of course there's grief. I mean, I am overwhelmed with grief and anger about, like, so angry, but also so grateful. So what happens is, when you're starving for so long, now it's like the fact that I can watch Game of Thrones season 4 with my boyfriend and drink a glass of wine in the evening is like indescribably pleasurable.
And it's there's such small creature comforts for some people that live in the parts of the world that we live in. And something that we probably take for granted, just putting the TV on and putting on whatever we want to watch. And I often think about that for people that just get undisturbed sleep throughout the night, because we have 2 children under 2. And I often think, like, wow, you probably take your sleep for granted and don't realize like how difficult it can be. So for you to just be able to sit there, like, that must feel like a very big deal to kind of, just have your glass of wine, have your partner there with you who makes you feel happy and wholesome, and just put on some I don't know how it would be described in the group that you're a part of, but some of the more worldly TV programs that are available for us outsiders of spirituality to access. So that sounds incredible, like how enriched your life is now. And it's important, I think, to say that these are all the things that this guru who you admired and who you, like, I don't know if worshipped would be the right word to use, because I'm not sure if there was a deity that you were worshipping, or if it was this man himself, or if that's the way he wanted it to be. But you have the things that he told you couldn't have. You have this fulfillment with a relationship with another man that he said you couldn't have, and you have that now. And you have your love back for music, which is so important, because he could have ruined that for you for the rest of your life, and that would have been such a shame, because we should nurture our creative outlets. I have this podcast that allows me to do that, fortunately. And it's just so good to hear that you're practicing your music. We are going to put one of the songs that you sent over to me yesterday at the end of the episode, so if anybody would like to listen to some of T's music, there will be a 7-minute track at the end of the episode that you sent over to me for people to listen to. But it's so important to have that artistic outlet, and you have that now, and you're back to doing your music, and and being told that you don't need education because the answer to life is here with me. But you've left now, and you've kind of gone back to your PhD. And it's like everything's just for you. Took a 23 gap year, 23 year
I did.
gap year.
Yeah,
20, yeah.
I did.
And now you're back to all of those things, and that just sounds absolutely wonderful, and hopefully inspirational for other people who have maybe gone through similar experiences.
I hope so. And there's no getting around the really horrible pain. I mean, like I expect that I will be in some way spending my life unpacking this, learning about how my thinking and helping other people. Yeah, I mean, I have to help now, and this is why I'm speaking out, because I hope that somebody in this town hears this and that it helps them. If it's just one person, then great. Like and my goal is not to dismantle the cults. My goal is to survive and to help us understand why we fall for these things, How do we do it?
Yeah. And we talk a lot about the stigma that comes with people who the misconception of the air quotes type of person who would join a group that would use these types of coercive tactics, and the truth is that there is no particular type of person. It doesn't matter what walk of life you come from, what IQ you have, what job you have. It could be anything in life that would lead you to kind of being susceptible. Like you said, you said the word ripe, and you've had all of these experiences that have led to you kind of being more open to a group like this. But it could be like somebody loses a loved one, or somebody's just sick of their 9-to-5 job and they're looking for something a little bit different, and they meet this community of people that instantly love bomb them, and they're like, oh my goodness, this is what I need in my life. It could just be anything that happens to anybody that causes them to be more susceptible to a group like this. And I think it's always important to relay that message when the point comes up in these episodes. But have you spoken to anybody else that's left the group? Have you spoken to them about their experiences, even if they haven't come forward publicly? Has there been anybody else you've connected with?
Lots and lots of people, yeah. And there's very gradually starting to be a group of people locally who are ex-members who are starting to speak as a group. And we have been, just this morning, we were speaking with some people at the university, and we're not sort of, on this campaign, but what's happening is that we keep running into people who have relationships with the group or the farm.
Right.
And we are approaching some of these people, and we're letting them know what we know. So for example, if a group of people is visiting the farm on a regular basis, or renting a space from the Sufis, or sometimes, if it feels appropriate, we are approaching some people and we're saying to them, I just want to let you know, I have information for you if you want it. Like, here's the full story of these people that you're in relationship with, and I just thought you might want to know that.
Abuse is rife in this community. It's just FYI.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're not telling you cut ties. We're not telling you, I just want you to have the information. And they're always like, oh my God, thank you.
Yeah. And I wonder, just drawing on some last minute kind of before we finish up, just one little observation that I've had as we've spoken is this need for you to do everything perfectly and to put 110% into into everything that you do, which translated into your early commitment to this group, and probably to your your 23-year commitment overall. Do you think that the sunk cost fallacy for you was one of the reasons why you stayed so long?
I think that's part of it, but I think there's really in the guru relationship, or the relationship with the narcissist, he expertly plants little moments of acknowledgement. So in other words, there really is, even after all those years, this feeling that if I give more and try harder, that I will get a nugget, And so, I can give you examples from the last few years where he would just give a little bit of a compliment, or a little bit, like I feel just slightly seen. And that would get me through, because I pledged obedience to him. So there's a loyalty, but there's also, and there's a love, and sort of like but all my effort is going into this moment where he will acknowledge me. And he's still somehow, that was still alive in me, even, in March of, I don't know, like it just, so the idea that you just described, I get the point, but at least consciously, that was not, I still believed I was going to get the gold.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm sure there's some overlap there, but.
Yeah. And it reminds me of an interview I did with a lady who was part of the Soka Gakkai international group for so long, and they promised, like, after 30 years of commitment that you'll reach this kind of level of enlightenment, and then she reached her 30th year in the group, and she was like, okay, well, where is it then? Why isn't it happening? Right. And then she started to realize that it was a promise that was never going to be fulfilled. So I definitely think that there is some overlap there. But my overall point is, like, if anybody is struggling with kind of, I don't want to leave this group because of the amount of time or money or effort or all these relationships, everything I've put into this group, I can't leave because of all of these reasons and all of this that I've put into the group. But you've only been away from them for 17 months. And I think that your situation is a perfect example of why it's okay to walk away, and what awaits you on the other side once you've made that decision. You've empowered yourself so much, and you've gone back to doing things that make you feel happy and fulfilled. So there probably is always going to be that level of, all of this that I put into it, and what am I walking away with? But
yes,
on the other side of it, here you are with your story, which I think is incredible.
Yeah, it is really, really, really scary and really hard to leave. So you lose everything. You really do. And of course, like you just said, you gain everything back, and but it is the feeling for quite a while of, like, total terror. Mm-hmm. So that's a true story.
So you're working on your music now, which you're going to be releasing and hoping to have that uploaded to Spotify at some point soon. Is there anything else that you have in the works in terms of maybe writing a bit more, releasing some more articles online, or maybe launching a support group for people to connect once they leave this movement? What do you think is next for you now?
Well, I have a video. I have a YouTube channel called Quit Your Cult, which is, there's 165 videos on there now. And they start from me last March, just chronicling. And it's funny because you can see I have a giant beard now. And back then I have a shaved head and a shaved face. And it's like, it's really dismantling and trying to understand and getting through this whole year and a half. Like it's pretty cool. Like I didn't set out.
Wow. Yeah, so if you were to put the videos next to each other, it's like a montage of my time out of the group goes from you kind of having this really, really close shave to you growing this like magical beard.
Yeah, I have a giant COVID beard. So, and then like I said, I am in a month. I think COVID's going to ruin the live performance of this, but I am developing a monologue show, which will probably be an hour and 15 minutes. It's probably going to be a video thing. I'm going to do that. And I have to tell, especially the UK people, that there are some really important anecdotes, because I've always been an Anglophile music guy, especially since I'm from the 80s. So there are very prominent depictions of Freddie Mercury, Rob Halford, and Morrissey, because I'm describing my adolescence and I'm describing my relationship kind of to these.
Wow.
So these are, it's a pre-cult show, but I describe the moment where I'm on the stoop of the cult house and how that feels. And I'm kind of going back into my life and trying to unpack and unwind how I ended up there, and then I will do performances. I'm a real performer kind of person. So I think over the years, what I'm hoping to do is kind of develop a series of performances that really show what it was like and how I ended up there. And this particular one is, I have the moment that I discovered that I bought my first Smiths record in 1985, and what that meant to me as a kid, as a gay kid in Indiana, hearing Morrissey's voice. I think it's pretty funny it's got to be kind of interesting for UK listeners to be like, what is, like, did you know that your music meant that much to me?
It's funny because I'm at the moment I'm just doing some research into Charles Manson to do some deep dive stuff for the Patreon, and it's funny, like the effect that the Beatles had on him personally, also just America in general, and I'm actually in Liverpool as well, so it's really quite crazy to it's wild just to because I know like Beatlemania was a thing, and I've been to the Beatles Museum in Liverpool, and they have kind of footage of the effect that the music had on the fans, and when they land in America and they come out of the plane and everyone's like passing out everywhere. It's so it's strange, and interestingly as well, I actually attended Paul McCartney's performing arts school in Liverpool, and when you graduate, he's there to shake your hand on stage and basically like give you your certificate and be like, congratulations on graduating. So as I'm going through this Charles Manson research and reading about the effect that they had on him, it's making me realize that like maybe I didn't realize the significance of meeting him as a person and how that would feel for some other people, like the effect that could have on other people. Because to me, it was just like, oh, cool, Paul McCartney, he's awesome. They changed music. Like, the Beatles were great. But for some people, that would be like, like everything in their life that they've wished for. I don't know. It's just it's weird when those things happen. So that sounds really, really interesting. Like I would love to see those live shows and those thoughts come together into a form of sort of expressive art. So hopefully you'll upload those to your YouTube channel.
Yes, and there'll be the album as soon as I have 3 more tracks to mix, and then I have some artwork coming. I mean, hopefully in the next 2 weeks that's going to be available, and I'll put something on the YouTube channel. And right now I'm only YouTubing every week or two, but there's definitely an arc there that's interesting, and I just love to connect with people. So
and especially because like I only have a couple of hours for each of these interviews, and there's just we could just talk forever about everything. So it's always great when people have other platforms that listeners can go and visit, because if they would like to know a little bit more about your experience or specific parts of your experience, then they can go and access that platform to maybe gain some further knowledge or perspective on what you've been through.
Yeah.
So what I will do is I will upload your Medium article and your YouTube channel to the episode description for anybody that wants to check those out. And as I've mentioned, we will have the 7-minute track that you sent to me yesterday featured at the end of this episode as well, for anybody that might be interested in listening to some of the stuff that T's been working on.
Thank you so much.
It's just
so
thank
much.
you for coming and sharing this story with me. It's been very insightful, and as I said at the start of the episode, if anybody else has experienced things similar to this group, then please get in touch, because I would love to know more, and I'm sure that the listeners would as well. So I guess all that there is left to say is thank you so much for your time today, T. I really, really am thankful for you to come and share your story with me, for opening up and talking out more about this group, because somebody certainly needs to be, and you've taken on that role, and I think that's commendable. So thank you so much for coming here today.
You are welcome, Casey. You are providing an important service. Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Bye.
What if I can't get out? 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 Is there some way out? Is there some way out of here? There must be a space. Is there a space? Is there a place? Is there a place? Where is the place? Where is the place? Why are you still here? I can't even think. I can't even breathe. I can't know. What if I knew? What if I knew? What if I can't get out? No words can pack the power that I need. But I have no other option but words and sense. It's a trap. You will fight me, you will win. But I can create a bunker, and I can blow up its walls. And I will find my way to create space for myself. And you will be obliterated because you go. I know I need to let you go. But for now. I do this so that I don't destroy something. I do this so that I don't blow up the building. I say this so that no one is in danger. I do this to preserve my life, to break the bonds. I do this to quit my cult. I do this so that you no longer have power over me. I do this with all my strength. I make this pounding beat. I kill it. I smash it. I destroy it. I build it. This voice is beautiful. This voice is powerful. This voice is courageous. How do they know? How come they know? Is this bad? Get off of me. Get the fuck off of me. What if I can't get out? 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 Is there some way out? Is there some way out? There must be a space. Is there a space? Is there a place? Is there a place? Where is the place? Where is the place? Why are you still here? I can't even think. I can't even breathe. I can't. No. What if I knew? What if I can't get out? You must stop. No words can pack the power that I need. But I have no other option but words and silence. It's a trap. You will fight me, you'll win. But I can create a bunker, and I can blow up its own walls. And I will find my way to create space for myself. And you will be obliterated because you go. I know I need to let you go. But for now. You must stop.
At Kings Island, it's never too early to start thinking about next year's fun. That's why we're offering the lowest price of the year on a 2022 Gold Pass right now. That includes unlimited visits this year, so you can enjoy Tricks and Treats Fall Fest, Haunt, and Winterfest. Then unlimited visits next year to try new foods, hang with the Peanuts gang at Planet Snoopy, scream on our world-class coasters, and splash away at Soak City Water Park. All for as low as $105 plus applicable taxes and fees. Hurry, offer ends soon, so get your Gold Pass now at visitkingsisland.com. It's amazing in here.